Greetings, greetings. Is I your king again? Clifford Jefferson, the son of Godfrey, the fifth caravan Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem, the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, also known as King Edgar Jefferson, the one who ruled the peaceful territory. Along by my side, as always, my queen, Sister Godwinson from the House of Godwinson, Archbishop from the House of Belmont, C.A. Cole Judah from the House of Murphy, as well as Brother Scott, Brother Gray, Brother Milligan, Brother Earl Burgess from the House of Burgess. I'm glad you brothers are all here, as well as those who could not be here. We're now on part 3, if I'm not mistaken, on this marvelous lesson in regards to the authority that we have as the King's Bench. We need to understand how important it is, because this is where our petitions in lieu of to the crown comes in. All those who are not up to date, I suggest that you pass this video and start from scratch. Those who are able to receive this information in regards to being a quick thinker or a quick receiver of information, and I willingly accept you in this meeting today, and the meetings of the mind, because what we're really here to do is to get our minds, to get our bodies to follow what our mind says, because this is what we call the resurrection. Anything the mind does, the body will follow. And why I say this is because this is a history that the mind forgot, because it's the body. The body put you in this predicament, not the mind. Everything the body do, the mind follow. That's not the way it's supposed to be. So what your ancestors have done through me is to put your mind back in perspective where your body should follow. Because just in case those who follow so-called religious philosophy in regards to God coming back or Jesus coming back, if that particular entity was supposed to come back and you really don't know who he is, do you think you're going back with him? If you believe that your ancestors with a dog, with a man with a dog on it, do you really think you're going to go back with that? Because we don't see no ancestors look like with dogs on their head, baboons and stuff like that. So be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. All those believing in spook abstracts, we didn't believe in spooks. That's why they call it pagan worship, because we believed in ourselves. So if our ancestors look like us, are coming back from us, because we know mind is not the physical body, it's not even attached to the body, it's etheric. So if your ancestors who are etheric beings who put you here to live and exist in regards to understanding why you're here, so that we can go back there and learn not to come back here. This is why people pass away. All the hell they did on this earth, they take it with them on the etheric realm and the sevenfold. And now they are left to deal with those folds on the etheric realm where there's no encumbrances now. That's the reason why they choose to reincarnate back on this plane, to get it right. Those who live to get life from the physical plane and physically go back to the etheric state, they choose not to come back. Why? Because on the etheric state, even though they're free from encumbrances, they don't have that negative energy affecting them on the etheric plane. And that's the reason why you're here. So while you're here, you shouldn't be enjoying anything. You're supposed to be learning. Because that's the gift of going home. Everybody talking about Planet X, Planet Albion, ETC, the Mother Plane, the Crystal City. Your ancestors are coming back for a field. And this is the preparation, because they come back for you. If you don't know your history, what's the point of taking you back? Mm-hmm. What's the point of taking you back home if you don't know who you are here? And that's the whole point of this. It ain't about your mother and father, your brother and sister who come to your womb. It's about the Church of God. Why you think why you think the Church of Scotland made the abstract story, or what we call the movie Captain Kirk? Beat me up, Scotty. Beat me up, Scotty. That's the Scottish Church. Captain Kirk was called the church. It's called the Kirk. The Scottish Church was called the Kirk. And all those who don't know that. So they showed you right on TV the spookism that they got y'all following, because they insert your estate, which is the concrete, which I'm giving to you right now. All right, let's rock. Courts of the King's Bench is the understanding of who we are in regards to us being lords, and decreeing those who are underneath us, which are those inferior courts, which we call the courts of exchequer pleas and exchequer chamber, because we know that those are the gatekeepers to keep you in hell. All right.
Absolutely.
Court of the King's Bench, we understand where it derived from. Let's go to the Bill of Middlesex. Oh, let's read here. Let's read a little bit more. It actually speaks about it right here. I'll let you read a little bit more, Brother Gray from the House of Gray, and then I'll transfer it to somebody else. Start from the 15th, 16th century. Did we read this already or no?
No, that's where we left off at.
Okay, go ahead.
In the 15th and 16th centuries, the King's Bench jurisdiction and caseload was significantly challenged by the rise of the Court of Chancery and equitable doctrines as one of the two principal common law courts along with the common pleas. To recover, the King Bench undertook a scheme of revolutionary reform, creating less expensive, faster, and more versatile types of pleading in the form of bills as opposed to the more traditional writs. Although not immediately stemming the tide, it helped the King's Bench to recover and increase its workload in the long term. While there was a steep decline in business from 1460 to 1540, as the new reforms began to take effect, the King Bench's business was significantly boosted. Between 1560 and 1640, it rose tenfold. The common pleas became suspicious of the new developments as legal fictions such as the Bill of Middlesex damaged its own business. Fighting against the King's Bench in a reactionary and increasingly conservative way, an equilibrium was eventually reached in the 17th century until the merger in 1873.
That's called the Judicature Act of 1873. Keep reading.
The King's Bench jurisdiction initially covered a wide range of criminal matters, any businesses not claimed by the other courts, and any cases concerning the monarch. Until 1830, the King's Bench acted as a court of appeal for the exchequer of pleas and the common pleas, and required Parliament to sign off on its decisions. From 1585, the Court of Exchequer Chamber served for appeals of King's Bench decisions.
Okay, let's go a little further. All right, 1 second. No, we did all right. We can leave this. All right, where I want to go. The King's Bench. So we know the King's Bench, the origin why it was established, and we know that now it's under the authority of what we call the Supreme Court. And we know every state within the United States got Supreme Court under the states by way of their creation of their state's constitution. Under the state, which is unlawful because we know that in September 20th, 1777, New Jersey states changed the word or the term states for colonies. I mean, they changed the word colony and colonies for the term state and states. There was the violation of the original contract because there wasn't no states at this particular time.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all follow?
Follow.
Okay. All right, let's see here. So now it said that in 1722, the Supreme Court transferred the power of the King's Bench to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. Didn't it say that?
Sure did.
If y'all been paying attention. Okay, this is going to bring you to the Bill of Middlesex. Somebody read that. All right, Archbishop, you can read.
We also have
Actually, no, Brother Burgess.
Sister Walker as well from the House of Walker.
Oh, greetings, Sister Walker from the House of Walker.
Greetings, Sister Walker.
Is she there?
Hello?
Can you hear Sister Walker?
Muted.
You're muted.
Oh, greetings.
Greetings, Sister Walker from the House of Walker.
Greetings. Glad to be here.
Yes. We was hoping you come. We know you're fire. You had that fire. Bringing that fire. Welcome. As always, we're having a very good lesson today in regards to our authority as the King's Bench, and we're taking it back to its roots and bringing it up to date in modern times, how it transferred from the King's Bench to what we call the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court is a court of last resort in lieu of courts of appeals in regards to the inferior courts, which is all those inferior courts, which are district courts, superior courts, municipal courts, court of sessions, and all the other likes of them. So once again, we're on the third part of it. For that which you missed, you can also go back and review. For the second time, we just continue on. Once again, welcome. We're talking about the Bill of Middlesex as a result of the King's Bench. And the Bill of Middlesex it means middle country, and sex means sexton comes from villages. So when they talk about the Bill of Middlesex, they're talking about all the villages within the territory subject to the provinces in that jurisdiction underneath the crown. All right, so go ahead, Sister Brother Burgess from the House of Burgess, you can read. Can't hear you.
Yeah, unmute yourself, Esquire.
You talking to me, King? I'm here.
Yeah, go ahead and read for me.
The Bill of Middlesex was a legal fiction used by the Court of King's Bench to gain jurisdiction over cases traditionally in the remit of the Court of Common Plea. Hanging of the King's Bench remain in criminal jurisdiction over the county of Middlesex. The bill allowed it to take cases traditionally in the remit of other common law courts by claiming that the defendant had committed trespass in Middlesex. Once the defendant was in custody, the trespass complaint would be quietly dropped, and other complaints such as debt or detention would be
These are all fees, taxes. Now, what it's saying is that Middlesex, and by the way, I live in Middlesex County. So there's no coincidence that I am located in Middlesex County. Perth, Amboy, where our quorum was actually established, is in Middlesex County. So there's no coincidence to what we are doing. We're only fulfilling what we call, or what they call, a prophecy. So it says, where is that? Just over the county of Middlesex. Continue to read, Brother Burgess.
Go down. Okay. Go down some more for me. Okay. Is that the bill was part of a large reform movement to prevent equitable courts, such as the Court of Chancery, from undermining their business?
Stop. What this sound like? You're telling me that in lieu of the King's Bench, the highest form of the King's Bench is Chancery. And as a result of the finances that the courts of common pleas and exchequer were making, they got upset with the King's Bench. As a result of you cutting the Chancery out of the King, from the King, because the courts of exchequer chamber collects the fees for the King's Bench on behalf of the King. And the Court of Chancery is the consciousness of the King. So as you hear, the bill was a part of a large reform movement to prevent equitable, i.e. Chancery courts, such as the Court of Chancery, from undermining the benches or the courts of common pleas. And remember, the courts of common pleas hears matters whether they're criminal or civil without the King being there.
Yeah.
Follow? So if the King ain't there, that's called a court of common pleas. If the King is there, then that's called a plea to the crown.
Plea to the crown.
That's what it's called, a plea to the crown. When you plead to the crown, criminal actions are therefore going to be taken. Because that's a breach of what we call the King's peace. Why you think King Edgar the Peaceful is named King Edgar the Peaceful? It's a reason for that. All right, keep reading.
Hold on, let me see what it was far cheaper and faster than the other equivalents used by the Chancery and common pleas, leading to a drop in their business and an increase in that of the King's Bench. As such, the Chancery issued injunctions in an ineffective attempt to prevent its use. The bill was finally abolished by the Uniformity of the Process Act 1832. As a result of reforming actions such as the Bill of Middlesex, the common plea became increasingly conservative and resistant to the King's Bench changes because of the impact they had on the business of the common pleas.
Mhm.
This was best emphasized by Shade case,
Slave
case,
case.
a struggle between the old and new form of suing for breach of contract, although what is that? Equilibrium between the common law courts was finally reached. It eventually led to the dissolution with the Supreme Court of Judicate Act 1873 and merger into the single High Court of Justice.
Okay, so as we can see, the Chancery Court was the highest court of Chancery, meaning equitable, because we know in modern day you have law and equity. Law deals with law, criminal, and what is it? Criminal and civil, and what is the other one? Civil and criminal, yes. And then Chancery deals with general equity law, and we know general equity is called theology, which is God's law. And then you have what we call probate and family matter. Well, both family matter and probate should be heard in Chancery, because that's the only court you're going to get relief. Because the court of probate or court of family matters is dealing with the overseeing of the property.
Equity.
You know what I'm saying? No, that's our law.
Law.
When you're dealing with the ownership, that's equity.
Mm-hmm.
I like that flag, Sister Walker from the House of Walker. That's nice. That's a nice background. Okay. Let's see. Read background.
The Court of Common Pleas and Courts of King's Bench were two of the central common law courts in England and Wales in the 13th century until their dissolution in 1875. The common pleas jurisdiction was over common pleas, cases where the king had no interest. This in practice.
Stop. Now, I just said that. Courts of common pleas are courts where the kings have no interest. So if the king ain't there, they just making money for themselves.
Exactly.
The courts of exchequer chamber are for to collect the money for the king. But now they didn't cut the king out of the money. That's the result of that's the cause for the Judiciary Act of 1873. All right, continue to read.
This in practice means cases between subject and subject, including all actions taken under
Say
say it one more time.
Prosecute.
To recover debt or property which made up the vast majority of civil cases. The jurisdiction of the King's Bench, on the other hand, was over pleas of the Crown, cases which involve the king in some way.
Stop. That's all we need to read now. So now you understand that there's a difference between courts of common pleas, where you're left at the mercy of the court, and those are pleas to the Crown, which is to the king. But ain't no king here, so you left at the mercy of the court. You know what I'm saying? So you need a king. You need a king. How we know that? Let's go here. This is Oxford University. Right. This is from New Jersey. Story, move, Coco. Move. Papa doing class. As you can see, I didn't write this book. It says the story of New Jersey civil boundaries from 1606 to 1968. So this automatically includes the Charter of Virginia. As we start from 1606. That's the first colony of Virginia. All right. And we're in New Jersey, though. So why would New Jersey mention 1606 unless it was part of the territory of the Charter? First of all right, because we already showed you that the statute from 46:3-1 talks about feudal tenure abolished and lieu from 1664. We also showed you a statute from 1776 when it talked about feudal dissolved, and now it comes under the king, body, or politic, or corporate. That's called incorporation, which was incorporated under rights and charges of the 61-28 of New Jersey revised statute, rights and charges of Great Britain. And those charges now the government is just the transmission documents of powers and the rights extended from the government who granted it, which was the king. But New Jersey don't have no king. But yet you're going back to 1606. How is that? Now people might rewrite over that, but the king's bench don't, because we know our history. I'm gonna be real quick with this. As King's Bench learned men, we don't need to read the whole thing, but a lot of it don't pertain to us. Now remember, before you had America, Great Britain, you had France and Spain, right? Everybody agree?
Agreed.
And you had the colonies. When you go into the colonies, you had the slaves who were enslaved by the 13 colonies. Then when you get the history of Virginia, which is the first colony, you get into the enslavement of what we call the Powhatan. That's going back to Queen Betty. My mother's name is Betty Ann. And Queen Betty from the Powhatan was assumed to inherit or have land at the same time Queen Anne in 1702. Look up Queen Betty. We ain't gonna go through that. We did that in another podcast. But the reason why I'm showing this is that from the front page of the cover of the Civil Boundaries of New Jersey, in the table of content, because you can tell a lot by the table of content. All right. The history of New Jersey related to civil boundary, it starts off the Lenape Indians. Well, we know that, say it again? Lenape Native Americans. These are Indians. And as I said, these are Indians of dealing with the north of New Jersey. But before you deal with New Jersey, you got to go back to Virginia with the Powhatan. And before you deal with that, we got to go back to the French and Indian Wars, which stretched to the west coast of what we call North America, which goes back to the Roman Catholics of the House of Bourbon, which goes back to the 100-Year War, calling back to the Plantagenet Crown and the House of Berlioz, which were the tripling wars that resulted of the breakdown of the French estate, which you see behind Sister Walker and her background. Very important. So now you see point one. The Lenape Native Americans, we don't care about that because you know that wasn't true. There wasn't no Indians here because Indians don't have a right to intel estate here in North America. Case law support that. So now you come to point two. Dutch and Swedish settlement. Well, we know all that's irrelevant because they surrendered their authority back to the British when they conquered it, and now the authority came back under what we call the proprietors, right? Which you just read about. The proprietors were given grants by King James II, Charles I, Charles II, Duke of York, James II, and so on and so forth. So all of these were given grants. Under point three, early English grants. Grants are what we call letter patents. Letter patents deal with digitization as a result of naturalization. All right. So it says early grants, and 4, early English settlement, and 5, division of New Jersey in East and West. So this tells you a whole story. We're right in the glossary. As scholars, we know that Dutch was dealing with these settlements that were there before it was taken over by the English, which the claim was that actually never true inhabitants. They colonized it at the time of what we call the Anglo and Dutch War. So we were always here as Anglo-Saxon burghers. 3, when those monarchs took over us under what we call the head right system, they started giving out grants to foreigners, i.e. planters, i.e. natural denizens, to come over here as well as other grants were given to proprietors, to what we call New Jersey, which was East and West Jersey, which was conceded back to the crown in 1702, as you see there. All right, so it's in the content. Let's read just a little bit about it, since it's coming from the horse's mouth, New Jersey. All right, because in the court of what we call writ of manifest to the Supreme Court, and lieu of the de facto King's bench they represent, we can put them in check just based off this one document right here from the state of New Jersey, because they agreed that the original contracts they had, they broke.
Mm-hmm.
They're telling you right there. So to come in the court of law in regards to breach of a contract, they will lose because no law can't save them. You're not under no state's law. You're under a colony law. And as the law of the colony, you had contracting parties. You had the grantee and the grantor. And the beneficiary was the heirs and successors, who are us. That makes sense, everybody?
Makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Okay, let's go down and read a little history. Be short and sweet. If we ain't saying nothing new, they already know it. So when you go to your county freeholders meeting from your prospective counties, you bring the charter to them. Where is your authority to operate in that franchise that you so-called claim to hold? Because if it ain't the colony, then that seat is vacant. Give me 1 second. Okay. We ain't got to read point 1, because we already know about that. See how beautiful it is when you learn from the King's bench? You know what's irrelevant, you know what's not irrelevant. So point 1 is irrelevant because we're not Indians, right? So why would we need to read point 1? That don't make no sense.
Point of interest, King.
Go ahead.
Is the etymology, going back to the origin of words, that brings forth the clarity and how we're able to skip past what's relevant and what's truth and falsehood strangely mixed, because people try to write themselves into our history, and if you don't identify them, which they're telling the truth, but you have to be able to identify it by knowing the etymological origin of the use of said word, the distinguishing from English and British, the distinguishing from grantor to beneficiary, etc. But knowing the use of each word and its etymological origin is what provides a lot of clarity.
Well said. You're absolutely right. Because as a people, we read right over stuff. And that's our problem. You notice when you read something, I mean, I read over this stuff before, and the clarity is not coming till now as a result of that getting the information, because it's like a puzzle. You can pick a piece of puzzle up and it won't mean nothing to you because you don't know where to put it. But once you put the rest of the puzzle up and you get down to the nitty-gritty, you got 3 pieces. It ain't no problem, because it's like seeing from above than seeing on the flat. When you see from above, you can see everything. So that's the position I'm putting you as members of the, or soon to be members of the English Church Church, as invited to the King's bench. You're not seeing from below, you see it from above. So you're seeing a vast explanation to what's going on for being able to see from a position that other people can't see. So you got to raise yourself to a level because other people can't see it. So all this stuff that we're from point 1, they have to read that because they don't have no starting point. I always say, he who writes your books sets your timeline. Charlie said, time of a world, but man was not. At the lifetime of man begin, the time of man will be no more.
Man, can I
So
understand?
if you know who you are, then there must be a record.
That's right.
All right. So now we can't use 2. Why? Because we're not Dutch, nor are we Swedish. Make sense?
Follow.
So we can move right past that. Now, on your own time, you can read it just to get some more clarity of what took place in the scenario. But as a result, I'm not going to do all that. It took all that time for y'all to create this confusion, but I don't want to have to go through that. I want to get to the quick result. I don't need to go through all that. I'm going straight to the head. Why would I go Why would I pitch off a toe when you got 4 other toes, 2 legs, and everything else? I'm going straight for the head. All right, and that's what we're doing. I'm teaching you how to go straight for the head. It's going to be beautiful, y'all. And once again, this is evidence. This is what we do, right? When we go to court, we're calling the dead to the testimony stand. How many people can do that? Call the dead up. I'm calling up William Franklin. William Franklin was the last world governor. Would you please take the stand? They be looking around. We got this testimony right here, for the record, on the record. You know what I'm saying? So this is how beautiful your ancestors is. It's on the record. How we know it? Just read what it said. Point 3. Brother Burgess, brother, go ahead, Archbishop.
And that was our 30
One,
minutes. So now we got to go ahead and get ready for part 4.
Part 4. That's how fast we move. Is this lesson beautiful or not?
It's definitely.
Absolutely. Where are our authority? Where do you get your authority? Our authority.
This is our authority. Queen Elizabeth, King James, Charles, George first, second, and third can't tell you nothing. How I know? I'm about to show y'all. They can't tell you nothing. They enslaved you. They
Jeez.
enslaved you. All right, Brother Burgess.
We'll be back to part 4 in a
Point
minute.
3.